Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the One Talk podcast. You're here again with your host, Ryan McCarthy. And today we are joined by Jack from It's Cool to Cry clothing brand. So It's Cool to Cry is a clothing brand making mental health cool. Their fun and inclusive clothing range empowers people to be proud of their relationship with mental health, plus 10% of each sale is donated to mental health charities. By providing a free tool to improve your emotional IQ with every order, It's Cool to Cry wants mental health conversations to happen naturally in everyday conversations. The mission is to make mental health more approachable, and with a statement that Jack has brought forward as well, he has said, by making mental health approachable, we talk about it. If we talk about it, we get more comfortable with it. If we get comfortable with it, we get cool with it. If we do that, we can make mental health cool. And within today's episode, we touch on so many great topics and subjects around mental health, Jack's journey, the purpose behind starting this clothing brand, and why he's so passionate around mental health and creating this change. So there's so many cool things that we touch on in this episode. We go on deep on a lot of topics as well. And we really just share some raw vulnerability around mental health and struggles that we've both been through. So keen for you to dive in today's episode, hear Jack's story, hear this great chat about mental health. But in other news, if you could please leave this podcast a rating, it means so much in terms of helping this podcast grow and reaching a larger audience. So if you're on Spotify or Apple, if you could leave a rating, if you're on YouTube, if you could just subscribe, follow on any platform, it just means so much in terms of helping it grow and getting this message out there to more people. But without further ado, let's welcome Jack.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all. The marathon continue. Victory lap tonight, though. Victory lap tonight.
Welcome to the One Talk podcast with Ryan McCarthy.
The marathon continues. That's what you were saying.
Welcome, Jack. How are you, brother?
Good, thanks, Ryan. How are you, mate?
Doing well, thanks, man. Thanks for making the trip all the way to North Brizzy.
Mate, not a problem. Thanks for getting me from the station. That was the royal treatment. I appreciate it.
VIP service.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know why you made me sit in the back, though.
Just like an usher driving you around the city, like a limo.
Yeah.
It's good to have you on, man. We linked up, I think, first in October or November last year. We've planned this ahead. And when I was flicking through our messages when we first connected, because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing anything in case you mentioned something for this episode, I was like, as if it's been this long since we actually first talked. Like, time's gone so quick.
Yeah, that's it. And, mate, you got me right at the start of when I was trying to get I'm still trying to get the wheels spinning, but I was probably starting the car back then. And, yeah, it's been good to follow you as well. You've had some great guests on, especially recently. I think your journey's sort of picking up and getting some momentum. So I'm glad we got to make it happen, and I'm glad I could come up here with you, mate.
Hey, epic. Well, I'm bloody keen to get into this one. So I'd like just to start with giving you the opportunity to share with us, who you are, what you do, and just give us like a overview before we get into today's chat.
Yeah, no stress. Thanks, mate. So, yeah, my name's Jack Davis. I'm the founder of It's Cool to Cry, and I've got a campaign. I'm trying to make mental health cool. And before I go any further, I just want to put a bit of a warning out there to the listeners that I will touch on a couple of heavy things. So if there's something that brings up some extra feelings for you that you're not quite ready to go through at the moment, just be prepared to turn it off and come back at another time. And to set the tone, I also want to tell you a funny story about therapy. Just to let people know that mental health doesn't have to be serious all the time. We do have to take it seriously, but we don't have to become rigid when we talk about it. So this is I had a recent bout of therapy in the last 12 months or so, or last 9 months or so. And I went back to therapy for the first time ever to talk about some anxiety. I think I've had anxious thoughts and anxious episodes in the past, but it was starting to become overbearing, and the negative thoughts and the awful self-talk was taking over, and I was waking up with a constant anxiety and dread. And I'm like, right, cool. I don't know how to fix this. Let's go speak to a therapist. And after a bit of time on a waiting list, I got into a therapist. And funnily enough, it was my first ever male therapist, which I was kind of looking forward to because I'd avoided male therapists. I'd avoided male therapists in the past because I have a fear of men in power or alpha males. And part of this current bout of anxiety was to do with this, a man in power, man in a position of power, and how it was affecting me. So I'm like, fuck, all right, I'm going to go see a male therapist about my fear of blokes, my fear of men. And I'm like, okay, cool. So we're getting to know each other over a couple of weeks, a couple of months, and he says, right, Jack, I want to do a re-imaging exercise with you. And is that okay? I'm like, all right, what is it? It's my first time doing this. And the therapist, he was a very softly spoken, gentle guy, kind of a small frame, felt really comfortable around him. I enjoyed, he was like such a professional and really, really helpful. But yeah, quite a slight guy, probably 60 kilos wringing wet sort of thing, just to give you a bit of an idea of what he was look like and his demeanour. So I'm like, yeah, okay, let's do this re-imaging thing. So he said, how it works is that you're going to think of one of your earliest memories about why you think you're uncomfortable around men, or certain men in positions of power make you uncomfortable. You're going to close your eyes. You're going to describe the memory. Then I'm going to walk into the memory and I'm going to try and help you reframe it. Sound good? I'm like, yep, cool, no worries. So I should also say this as well. I've come from a very, very loving family. And even now, I can't believe how much they love. My parents love me now and love me back then. This is not painting a picture of my parents, but the story goes like this. So I close my eyes and I'm describing myself riding down a hill. I'm like 3 or 4. I'm on a red Repco bike and I'm zooming down this hill. Got my eyes closed and I'm talking to my psych. So I'm zooming down this hill and I've got the wind in my hair. I'm flying down this hill. I'm having a great time. I get to the bottom of the hill and I look around and my dad is like really, really upset and he's been yelling at me to stop, probably because he was like afraid that I would run into a car or get hit or something like that. And I remember feeling quite scared about this anger and why he was so upset and why he was so angry, and he was, yelling a bit and quite cross at me. And he's saying this and saying that, and Tristan, my psych, goes, right, now Jack, thanks. I'm going to come and walk into this situation and talk to your dad. My dad's a builder. He's a pretty big guy, pretty gruff. And so I'm like, okay, cool. So I close my eyes and Tristan comes in and he goes, now, why are you yelling at this young boy? Do you think this is really necessary? Should you be doing that? It's quite unfair the way that you're yelling at him. You're scaring him. You're making him scared. And this isn't good for him. You're not behaving like a proper father or a proper adult. And Tristan goes, or my psych goes, now, Jack, what do you think your dad would say to me if I came in and said that to him? And I opened my eyes and I said, mate, I reckon he'd tell you to piss off. So it's just one of those things where Tristan, my psych, I made him break because it was a bit of a funny moment with how therapy can work. And he was really good about it. He could see that, walking into a father-son interaction like that might not have been the way it would have gone down, but the way that worked for me was great. He got through some really interesting moments about anxiety and especially how it presents in me and when it would present. So therapy, as helpful as it is and as serious it can be a really fulfilling time. It can be a lighthearted time. It can be just like mental health chats, they can be really relaxed and they can be fun.
Yeah.
They can be fun.
Do you feel like one of the biggest, or not the biggest, or one of the main misconceptions around going to therapy is that you walk into the room, the person's wearing a suit, judging you with a notepad, judging you about your problems and what you're going through. But instead, it's somewhat the opposite of that. Because you're going in there, you're building a rapport with this person, they're getting to know you so they can get inside your mind and figure out ways to help you with coping strategies, help you with ways to overcome the challenges that you're facing, or maybe deep dive into your childhood, like you mentioned there. Like, it can be lighthearted and fun and also serious and emotional and happy and sad. Every chart of the roller coaster. But I feel like one of the misconceptions about going to therapy is what I mentioned before about walking into a room with a guy with a pen and pad and a suit judging you.
Yeah, and you'd lie down on a Chesterfield couch and he's got a tweed jacket with elbow patches on and a pipe. Yeah, like 100%. I haven't seen a psych like that yet. Maybe I will one day. But yeah, whenever I go back to therapy and to the same therapist in the past, and after months or weeks of a break or years of a break, and then being worried again, going back to the therapist saying, oh, fuck, I've got the same shit going on in my head, and I'm going back to see them. Every time I go back and see the therapist, whoever it is, more often than not, it's a greeting like, it's so good to see you again. Hey, thanks for coming back. It's so good to hear your voice. And this is what therapy is. It's a non-judgmental, non-bias, really welcoming environment for you to be comfortable to talk about what's going on.
Yeah.
And if it was an old guy smoking a pipe, taking notes, showing you ink blots on a paper, you know, it might be a bit of a different thing. So.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, especially with therapy. Like, just because you go to therapy or see a therapist or a psych doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. So I feel like people think you have to be on like such a deep end of the spectrum before they go and get help. Like, oh, my life, I'm not in psychosis, I'm not in like a manic state, so I don't need to see a psychologist, I'm fine. But I feel like if you're constantly avoiding getting the help, you're only going to stack more challenges on top of yourself, which eventually may push you into a manic state or psychosis or some really deep part of mental illness that you don't want to get to that could be avoided if you actually just go and speak to someone to begin with.
Yeah, mate, 100%. And there's the old saying, I'm sure you've heard of it, is if you've got a sore knee, you go get your knee checked. If you've got a sore head, you go get your head checked, which I think is great. It's a great start, but I've evolved that saying because it discounts the weight of people's problems. And we want to do things like I'll draw a parallel to physical health. And what we want to do is, like everyone can, work on their physical health to prevent physical illness, just the same way we can work on our mental health to prevent mental illness. So if we use diet and exercise to prevent a heart attack, the same way we can talk about our feelings and emotions before they become overwhelming to prevent mental ill health. And then the next part of that sore knee, sore head analogy is that it doesn't take into the amount of pain. So if we're on a physical pain scale, whether it's a 2 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10, you want to get it looked at, because if you don't get the 8 looked at, it's going to be something chronic soon, or sooner rather than later. And you want to get the 2 looked at, because if you don't get the 2 looked at, it becomes a 3, a 4, a 5. So we want to make the 2s a 1s and the 8s a 7, 6, 5. The same way we should be thinking about our mental health. Whether you're on a 2 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10 on that mental health pain scale, you want to talk about the 8s before it becomes something chronic, and you want to talk about the 2s before it becomes a 3 and a 4. So if you're at this level 1, 2, 3 out of 10, this is a great time to start talking about it and unpicking things so it doesn't snowball and doesn't get into this higher scale. And I think we forget that, and we feel like, oh, our problems aren't big enough. Our problems aren't valid because someone else has this going on, or I can get over it. It's not about that. That is a sort of an unfair pride and a bit old school, where the really great work that can be done is this early stuff. Get it while it's a 2, get it while it's a 3, get it while it's a 4, and try and bounce that down. Yeah. And I've personally, through a lot of life experience, a lot of practice, is through talking. And this is talking about your mental health and talking about your emotions and your feelings, that's the one that does the heavy lifting.
100%. I like what you said, just get it early, like early intervention, knock it on the head, because I find with myself, even when I find challenges in my own life, just being able to speak to a friend opens up so many doors going forward for me, because I'm able to get it out of my head to see it from a different perspective within myself, or my friend or someone around me is able to see a different perspective for me to then help me understand it deeper. So rather they're listening, not saying anything, and I see it differently myself, or they see it differently and say it to me, so I see it differently myself. Like there's so many benefits from just starting the conversation and talking.
Yeah, mate, 100% perspective is amazing. And I call most customers that buy something from It's Cool to Cry. And the common thing with everyone is that, or what I ask people is that how do you feel after having these types of conversations? And it doesn't have to be with a psych, it's with their partner, friend. It could be in their journal, it could be in the shower, it could be in the car. And a lot of the time, the common words that are coming up is clarity and relief, weight off your shoulders. And I'm sure I can definitely say, and a lot of people out there, is that once you do have these conversations, just how much better you feel afterwards.
Yeah. Now, I think a lot of people hold on to their stuff is because the shame and guilt they attach to the challenges they're going through and not wanting to open up about it. One example would be what you mentioned before about, you say that other people have got bigger problems, so mine aren't worthy of being validated. But it could be like the tiniest thing in comparison to the most dramatic thing. It doesn't matter. Like you still just got to be able to talk about it and figure out a solution. Because like you said, it starts stacking from a 2, 3, 4. And before you know it could be a 10.
Yep. And like it's this waxy build up of over and over and over, and it might just small thing, and then whack. Yeah. You snap at someone that doesn't deserve it, or you start to talk to yourself where you don't deserve it, and we start to spiral further and faster. That's what we want to prevent.
Yeah. Like with yourself, like how do you know when it's time to speak to someone? Like do you have like a threshold on emotional things or thoughts that go through your mind and or like emotions that you feel where you're like, all right, now I need to speak to someone? Like how do you, I guess, have the self-awareness within yourself to know when is the time?
Yeah, fucking great question. And this is so, I reckon there's a lot of confusion about this, but if we think about it as in a timeline, and if there's something bouncing around your head that you're uncomfortable with for 24 hours or 48 hours or 1 week, that's when you go, I don't want this in my head anymore. How do I get it out of my head? What have I tried? I've tried meditation. I've tried ice baths. I've tried walking. I've tried exercise. I've tried getting more sleep. If we can't shake it, then, I mean, personally, I'd be visiting, talking about it as the first point of call. Because again, like I said, I reckon it does 80% of the work. Yeah. So it's a real personal thing. If you can't live with something in your head for longer than 24 hours, then go and speak about it. If you can live with it for a week, go and talk about it after a week. So it's a bit of self-awareness there, but you can nail it. If you've been walking around with it in your head for too long, that would be a pretty good sign to go and speak to someone about it.
Yeah.
This someone doesn't have to be a professional. Yeah. This someone can be just someone you trust. This someone could be yourself in the shower. Just get it out of your head. Start hearing it. Start hearing the words out loud, and it will help.
She took the words out of my mouth. Like it doesn't have to just be professional. You could even speak to your dog. You know, like give them belly rubs and just talk to them about your problems or anything like that. Because I feel like that's where the saying where it comes from, where like a dog's a man's best friend. Because men, I feel like, hold a lot of shame around speaking up because they feel like they have to hold a certain image of themselves of being strong. So like maybe they do go and speak to their dogs and use them as like their bonding mechanism to overcome their challenges.
I've never thought about it like that, but I reckon it makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah,
for sure. And like I think we all know that psychs are expensive. Sometimes I've already mentioned a waiting list. There's a waiting list. But we've got to try and find someone or a group of people or a dog to have these conversations, so we don't have to rely on the professional intervention, and we can avoid the wait lists, we can avoid the costs, and we can most of all avoid mental ill health. Yeah,
that's why I think it's also important to have like a community of people around you, and I don't mean it has to be like hundreds of people in the community. Just like your environment around you it's important to have quality people in your life as well. Because like when I picked you up from the train station, the thing you asked me like, which is day, because you asked me how my day was, and I told you. Then you're like, oh, okay, was it happy? Was it rewarding? Was it sad? Was it? You asked me like 10 different questions about how it was. But it's good though, because it gets me thinking about like, oh, maybe this happened. Maybe I feel sad because of this. I never thought in that way. And maybe I was burying it down, which it might come up later in a negative way. It actually gets me processing it. So asking people quality questions like that, or having people around you to ask you quality questions, can also be helpful, I find.
Yep. And look, you're a chatter. You obviously, you run a podcast. Of course you're a chatter, but we are built for connection. And better questions get better answers. Yeah. We can all get better at that.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like the reason I love the name of your brand as well, it's Cool to Cry, is because there is a stigma on crying. And I find especially men, they hold on to it so much where they force themselves not to cry, and I feel like it turns into maybe anger, rage, frustration, anxiety, depression, because they're not really able to get that one part of themselves out that needs to come out.
Yep.
So like I want to ask, like, what really inspired the name to begin with?
Well, I think that's a great segue to maybe start to tell you where it all began. And to the listeners, here's the heads up. There's just going to be a quick mention, quick trigger warning on mental illness and suicide. But this started, my mental health journey started around 10 years ago, and I was dating a girl called Ellie, and she was young, well-travelled, had a great vocab, beautiful family, a great group of friends. And then one day, Ellie just started to get sick. And in a matter of months, she went from being loud, chatty, social, making plans, to not having the energy to get out of bed, shower, leave the house. And Ellie got really sick really quickly. And Ellie died from suicide when she was 25. And all of a sudden, this became something that wasn't on telly. This something didn't happen to a friend of a friend. This was real, and this was in our backyard. And I was fortunate enough to grow up with my brother and I. We grew up with our parents saying to us that suicide's not an option. You can always chat to us about anything. And growing up, we're like, what the fuck does that mean? And the penny dropped when this happened. And that kickstarted a fact-finding mission about what's mental illness and what's suicide. So I started to see psychs about that and finding out about what makes someone go to those lengths. And as that was happening, I was grieving, and not long after, I was getting ready for work one morning, and I saw a pair of Ellie's sneakers in my closet, and I cried. And that was sort of usual. I'd be crying in the morning, I'd be crying going to bed, I'd be crying in the shower, I'd be crying in the car. And that was the final straw. I'm like, I've had a gut full of this. I feel sick to my stomach. I don't want to cry. I don't want to be sad. I don't want to grieve anymore. So I just put a pin in it. Like, I didn't forget Ellie. I didn't forget us. I didn't forget her family. But I just stopped being sad. Yeah. And like, over the years, got on with my life. I moved overseas. I had new partners. And then I was seeing patterns in my own life coming out. And this was 5, 6, 7 years after Ellie's death that I wasn't really happy with. And I was a bit of a prick. I was short-tempered. I was moody. And I didn't like the version of myself. So I took myself back to therapy to address some relationship issues and then also properly grieve Ellie's death. And the biggest thing I learnt out of all of these sessions and some reading and the podcasts and looking inwards is that emotions aren't good or bad. They're all equal. Yeah. It's how we regulate and react to them that's important. So what this taught me is that you could be angry and you could be sad and you could be happy. So I let the sadness back in, which let the anger be acknowledged and regulated, and then happiness and joy continued. And it felt like a penny drop moment, but there's all this work going on in the background that happened. But when this happened, when I woke up one day or after that therapy session, I was like, holy shit. No longer was I bouncing between ecstatic and erratic or angry and happy like this. My life, my attitude and my mood became a bit more calm. And I was like, whoa, this is great. It's not exhausting. It's not an effort. This is much more calm, much more cruisy. So what I was allowing myself to do was to feel all the emotions. And it was not long after all this stuff that I'd be watching movies or I'd be reading books and I'd be bawling my eyes out. And this would be happy moments or sad moments in the book. I'm like, what the fuck is this? But I'm like, this is part of being human. This is part of enjoying being sad. And this is part of being angry but not lashing out and not doing the thing or saying the thing that you're going to later regret, and put the deep breaths in there or put the count back from 3 in there and regulate it. So manage it and look at it from a step back rather than being in the moment and do something silly. So my encouragement for me moving forward is to keep speaking about these emotions. And there are so many emotions out there, but a lot of us can only name a handful: happy, sad, and angry. And so what I'm trying to do here is to give people the permission to go and keep speaking, to one, speak about your emotions, but also give them tools to properly articulate and identify these emotions. Because I know from personal experiences that that's why I struggled for so long, even before therapy, but talking to mates and talking to partners, is that I don't know how to speak. And I'm thinking, why the fuck can't I describe this? It's because I didn't have the words for it. Yeah. So if we want to get people to talk, we've got to get them to know how they're feeling. How do they know how they're feeling? Well, we've got to give them the vocab for it. So this is where I try and do all these things through tools that I get send out with every order, and through some of the workshops that I run for schools, clubs, and corporates. It's all about trying to lift our vocabulary and improve our emotional IQ.
I love that. I don't think I've touched on that specific topic around mental health on this podcast, around expanding your vocabulary so you can really articulate how you feel, because sometimes it's hard to pinpoint it when you don't have the words for it. And that wheel that you have as well, that hits even harder now, like knowing the meaning behind it, because then you're actually able to see a word like, oh, it relates to this, and then this, like, oh, this is the fundamental of it all. Yeah,
exactly. Like, it's easy to say I'm angry, but are you angry, or are you let down, humiliated, frustrated? Yeah. And these conversations are so much better if you say, not only are they better for yourself because it soothes your brain, but it's also better for the person on the other side of that conversation because they know exactly how you're feeling.
Yeah, 100%. I also, like, before we touch on like the back end of the segment, you touched on do you mind if I bring it back a little bit?
Of course.
Yeah, so when Ellie first started to get ill, say like maybe 6 months to 12 months before that, what was your awareness around mental health? Did you know too much about it? What was your experience like with it?
Mate, fuck all. I didn't know a lot about mental health. I knew less about mental illness and even less about suicide. My old man had one of his good mates die from suicide, and that was about all I knew. It was something that, I mean, there's the stigma there. And just something that wasn't in the limelight, wasn't spoken about, something our family, and not a lot of my mates, if any, had to deal with really in such a close fashion. So, like I said, with Ellie's death, it was a real fact-finding mission about suicide and mental illness, but it kick-started, even though it backtracked at the start, my mental health journey. And now it's something that I hold in as high regard as physical health, and I really enjoy keeping physically fit.
Yeah, it's important. Like it, like honestly weighs heavy on my heart knowing that people out there believe that there is no other way, and they have to go down the path of suicide. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because, and also the question I asked you before, is because I believe the awareness before we even experience mental health ourselves is so important. With myself and my journey, I didn't know what mental illness was until I started to experience depression, anxiety. And I was like, what the fuck is this I'm experiencing right now? I didn't know what it was. And then after about 6 months of battling it, then I started to find words that I could identify with it because I didn't have the vocabulary. But before I experienced mental illness, if I knew what it was beforehand, I could have been able to step in and intervene and implement some early intervention or go and speak to someone about the challenges I'm going through. But the fact that it's like, even today with so much awareness out there, there's still not awareness out there, if you know what I mean, because still a lot of people don't understand it completely. So I think having the awareness is so important early on in our lives so that when we do experience it ourselves, we know exactly what it is and what to do if we do experience it.
Yeah. And look, I'm not going to deny that mental health or everyone's mental health is unique and sometimes confusing. But I personally believe that if we can speak about how we're feeling, it does a lot of the heavy lifting and will move the needle in the right direction about calming our brain, calming our mind, and getting us moving better into a better direction more quickly.
Yeah, and I feel like there's multiple factors you can add into it because like the physical training is so important, like going for a run, going for a swim, lifting weights, going for a cycle, now whatever it is you like to do to move your body plays such a massive role in your mental health as well.
Yep. Yeah, definitely hand in glove. And I reckon there's some days where my mental health is spurring on my physical health, or my physical health is spurring on my mental health.
Yeah.
So they're a team. The beauty about going for a run is it doesn't cost as much. Or the beauty about going for a walk is a lot of us can do it and it costs us nothing. The same with talking about our emotions or writing our emotions down is that it costs us nothing and the benefits are great.
Yeah. And don't feel like you're isolated as well in what you're experiencing and thinking that you're the only one in the world experiencing. Like, yeah, it might be somewhat unique to you because of the experiences that made the emotion or the thoughts. But the thing is, like, as hard as it is, in Australia, I believe the statistic is 2 million people a year have suicide ideation. So it's quite, unfortunately, common. But then that shows that there is a lot of resources out there to be able to speak about these ideations you have on your mind, whether it is all the things that we talked about earlier.
Yep. Yeah, and look, they're something that has to be taken really, really seriously, those suicidal thoughts. And there are some great networks and businesses out there that you can lean on, like Lifeline would be the first one I'd be going to for those sort of things if you don't have a professional in your corner right then and there. So, yeah, I'd be getting right onto that.
24/7 as well.
Yep, and they do text as well as phone.
Yeah. And that's it. The resources out there because it is, like, the price point to get a psychologist is expensive. So that's a really good way to start your journey of your own self-improvement to an extent. I don't want to use the word self-improvement, but you're able to start your own healing journey, let's say.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, like, what was some of the pillars that really helped yourself when you were grieving? Because I know a lot of people, we struggle with grief at different points in our life because we lose people. But for yourself, what's some of the things that truly helped you with grief?
Well, initially, like, I wasn't really tapping into reckless behavior of like excess drinking or anything like that, which was fortunate. But at the other end, I was sort of, after a point, I was running away from it. I ran away from emotions and I ran away from grieving. So I personally don't think I did it properly then. And that's why, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years later, it was starting to come out when I was watching TV shows or when I hear stories or when I'm reading a book. And the pillars, you asked about pillars of grieving. I think grief is so confusing. And the more people you talk about it, and the more that have gone through it, they'll have their own nugget of gold or their own bit of wisdom. The one that really worked for me was that if you imagine grief as a circle, and the circle, when you're grieving and you're right in the thick of it, the circle is in a box and the ball is touching every side of the box, and every time that ball of grief hits the side, it hurts. So right at that start, right at the start of your grief journey, that ball's big and it's touching the walls all the time. So it's really, really hurtful day in, day out. As time goes on and as you let yourself grieve and be sad, that ball gets smaller. It gets smaller, but it will bounce around the box. So it might get smaller and it'll hit the edge of the box every so often. And it'll get smaller and smaller and smaller, and it will hit the edge of the box less and less and less. But when it hurts, it still fucking hurts. Yeah. Because it could be that random song, the random street you drive down, the restaurant you went to, whatever it might be that pings and you go, oh, fuck.
Triggers a memory.
So it's, for me, grief is a time thing. When I go through it again, because it will happen again, is to just respect it. Unfortunately, it's a part of life. It's devastating, but it must be respected. Yeah, and that's how I'll be treating it next time. Yeah, and just lean into it and know that you can do. There's also another thing is that no one wrote the book on how Jack should grieve about A, B, or C, and no one wrote the book on how Ryan should grieve about A, B, or C. And I would say lean into however you feel. Again, I'd steer away from reckless behaviour of drinking and drugs and that sort of thing too much. Yeah. But if you feel like going for a run, go for a run. If you feel like painting, fucking paint. Yeah. But lean into the grief. From my experience, I'd be saying don't run away from it.
Yeah. That's the thing. The same tool doesn't work for everyone. And I think a good example I could give for this would be, I remember one stage, probably about 2 years ago, I started implementing morning routines in my life. And for me, more of a night person, so I'm super productive at night. In the mornings, I usually wake up, just get straight to it. Then the nighttime, I can actually do more of a routine. But for about a couple of months, I went and tried to do like morning routines, doing the whole gratitude, breath work, and doing all the things as I was doing. And I realized that I wasn't even getting any benefits from it. And I was actually building more resentment to doing these things that are meant to be good for me because I'm forcing myself to do something I don't want to do. Yep. So like these tools are awesome because they're working for other people, but instead it's like, well, it's not working for me. So what can I do that will actually bring me benefit to my life? So that's when you go on trial and error, a couple of things like, oh, this thing does work. Painting is awesome for me. Painting's not for everyone, but I can do it. And it's like meditation. Yep. Then some people can be like, I try and sit down and meditate, but I can't meditate. But walking could be meditating. Painting could be meditating. There's so many forms of it. So it's really just finding your own form of things that really help you.
Yep. And that's in life. And I think the physical health one, like I fucking hate spin classes. I'm not doing spin, but some people love spin classes. I'm like, cool, go your hardest. I'll do my physical health this way. You do yours that way. As long as you're doing it, great. Same with your mental health. I like speaking about my emotions. I'd be encouraging everyone to do that, but I don't want to do meditation or I don't want to do breath work, whereas I know that you might really enjoy that stuff. So different strokes for different folks. That's a painting pun. I should have used that one earlier. But yeah, like find what works and don't be afraid to try other things at the same time. Yeah. Or when you get a hang of it. Yeah.
100%. And like for yourself, I'm curious to see how this has affected you, because how it's affected me. So I found myself, the more I spoke about my past and my struggles and everything I've been through, the more I realized my emotions started to detach from the negative experience I've been through in life. You find yourself, the more you speak up, the more you're able to put a bridge the gap in between the emotions, so you're not so triggered initially or you're not so reactive to your own story. Instead, you're able to be more at peace with it when you do talk about it? Do you feel like a lot more acceptance has come into your life with it?
Yeah, acceptance or just like lessens the intensity of it. And I don't want it to sound like, and I'm sure you're the same, is that it's detracting from the importance of that and the importance of those people. In my case, the importance of Ellie. Like, just because it gets easier to speak about it or address doesn't make it. It doesn't take away from what actually happened.
100%. Yeah, because that's exactly it. Because then you're able to actually talk about it, your own experiences in the way where it can help others, and you're not somewhat taking yourself down the process, if that makes sense. So like for me, I used to be a drug addict and I used to be quite reactive when I'd speak about it. But now I can still speak about those days, not be reactive, but I can still hold that part within me because it still weighs a weight within inside myself.
It's part of you, mate.
Yeah.
And that's it. And like, it sounds like you've made that part of your life and you're proud of that part of your life because you could have turned left, but you've gone right and here you are now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a cool way to look back on it and be proud of that. And I think this is what I really want people to do is be proud of your relationship with mental health.
Yeah.
And this is, we've all got something and we should all be proud of it.
I think it was Jordan Peterson that said it. I believe he said, life without every emotion would be boring.
Yep.
Which is true.
Yep.
You know, you can't have the ups without the downs. You can't have the light without the dark. We got to have every aspect of life. I think that's what makes the light so much better. It's because we've experienced the dark and we know what that feels like. So when we are experiencing good times, we're really able to embrace it.
That's it.
Yeah. So like for yourself, man, I'm curious to know because I know we all have like rituals or maybe things that really help us stay on track with mental health. Mm-hmm. So what's some things that you do daily? Like I'm keen to know about your day to day.
Yep. I'd love getting up for a morning walk and I go get a $2 prison juice from 7-Eleven.
Prison juice.
Just a double short black. I put 2 in there because I'm a bit cheeky. Yeah. Put 2 short blacks in the regular cup.
I like it.
So I go do that. I try not to check my phone to a certain point, and I try not even to put a podcast in. I just want to. I've got a lot going in my head at the moment, trying to get this brand up and running, and that takes up a lot of my thoughts. So I don't mind leaning into those thoughts first thing in the morning. Plan the day or whatever it might be. Or if you just can't be bothered thinking about it, then have that walk where you're taking everything in, the trams. I'm from Melbourne, so yeah, the trams, the traffic, trees, people, noise, smells, whatever it is. Take it in and enjoy the walk for what it is, and just I like being selfish at that part of the day because that's for me. Yeah. And then once I get back home and I'm back in my office, like it's go time. It's like phone in another room and I'm working and enjoy that. And then diet's a big part of me feeling good from a physical perspective, and that will lean into me wanting to or be more energetic. So I'll go for the run, I'll go for the swim, I'll go to the gym, and that's going to help my own mental health. So I try and get into the gym a couple of times a week, run a couple of times a week, hit a tennis. I've joined the pickleball cult.
Oh, nice.
Joined the pickleball cult, which is good. So the physical health side of things is very important. Not that I do everything, do something every day. I also respect a rest day or a couple of rest days a week. And then when it starts to get to the evening, try and wind down at a reasonable hour. I've got, the phone sort of on airplane mode, put a red light on, try and read a book because sleep is another thing that I've really started to respect over my journey, as I thought I used to be a sleep when I'm dead sort of guy. Yeah. But after reading more, feeling the benefits of a good night's sleep physically and mentally, it's like, right, we've got to sort of put that right up there in your priority list of getting that dialed in. And that really starts, a good night's sleep starts from when you wake up early and you get the early morning sunlight and you get the walk in. So it's all sort of a habit and a routine that feeds itself. The early mornings help the nights. Yeah.
I feel like sleep is something we all do, but something we underrate.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially in the journey, like if you're building a business or building a brand or you're an entrepreneur in some sense trying to build something. I feel like one of the things that are sacrifice is sleep. I feel like for long-term benefit, sleep is super important.
Yep, for sure. And look, I've made a mental health routine sound pretty simple there, but like I said earlier, is that if there's something rattling around in my brain for 24 hours and then 48 hours or then a week or 2 weeks, and I'm like, I can't get over this is sticking, I need to speak to someone about it. Or if it's still sticking, I need to speak to someone else about it. And, that might be family, it might be a friend or a different friend, and just try and get that out. I might not chat about stuff at all for a week because I'm either internalising or I'm going all right. I know you've had Cooper Chapman on here from the Good Human Factory. Yep. He goes on about gratitude, and I think there's some power in that as well. It's not something I rely on, but it's another good thing, just as a bit of a wake up call, a little circuit breaker, a bit of a reset for you. If you're feeling a bit funny, that maybe it's these gratitude lists, listing them out loud or writing them down, can really just put a bit of perspective on things and help give you a little bit of a rev up.
Yeah, I agree, because I love gratitude. It's not something I do daily, but it is something I do when I become aware within myself that I'm not being grateful for things that are happening in my life, because I'm very much just a go type person that I don't really embrace the moment sometimes. So when I basically call myself out on that, I'm like, right, now I need to practice gratitude. Otherwise, who knows what's going to happen in 6 months if I just keep speeding through life and then actually stop and slow down and actually become grateful and actually realize what's happening in the moment.
Yeah. And what about you? What do you do for your mental health?
So for me, gym or exercise is massive for me.
Yep.
So lifting
I know
weights.
you've got a 2XL t-shirt on there, you fucking hench.
Just the shoulders, all shoulders. But usually it's lifting weights, because like when I first started to overcome my challenges with mental illness, the first thing that saved me in a sense was exercise and going to the gym. So still to this day, gym has played a massive part of my life, but now I'm getting into running, which I'm enjoying, because I broke my ankle quite a few months ago. So now I'm back in the running. So I'm kind of doing a mixture of the both. So exercise is huge, breath work is huge, meditation is huge, ice baths as well. I'd say they're the main things. But also like unwinding and listening to podcasts, because I went through a stage where I was trying to learn as much information as possible. I wasn't giving myself any room for fun. So now like I'll listen to a comedy podcast and just laugh for like an hour a day driving to work or driving home from work. So I think implementing things like that is massive, but also hanging out with the boys. I feel like that's a big one for me as well, like going for a kicking the soccer ball, or just going to play some 8-ball pool or something like that. Just getting out with your mates and having a laugh. So for me, they're some of the things I love to do.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
So for It's Cool to Cry, like I'm keen to know, like what's the mission for yourself and the brand?
So the mission, It's Cool to Cry's mission is to make mental health cool. And this is more than just getting a graphic designer to mock up a decent looking logo and slapping on a couple of shirts. What I'm trying to do, or when I say that, what I'm doing here is I want to make mental health more approachable. If we can make it more approachable, we'll talk about it more. If we talk about it more, we get better at talking about it. If we get better at talking about it, we get comfortable with it. If we're comfortable with it, we get cool with it. We can make mental health cool. So the majority of people that are buying It's Cool to Cry at the moment, they're already proud mental health advocates, and they're already having conversations, and this is a symbol for them to wear down the street saying, yep, I've been through some shit, or I'm going through some shit and I'm proud of it. And I want that feeling for people, like the same way that you'd put your Adidas or your Puma top on when you go to the gym. You're like, yeah, I'm equipped, I'm ready to go for a run, or I'm ready to go to the gym. I want that feeling from a mental health perspective when people put It's Cool to Cry and say, yep, I'm equipped, I've been working on my shit, and I'm going to keep working on my shit, and I'm proud of that. So that's where I want that feeling, to invoke that feeling for people when they put It's Cool to Cry on. Yeah. Or at least have that in their back pocket if they don't want to buy from me, or they're not wearing it. So that's what I want the clothing brand to become. And where the runway for it is so long and so wide is that anything could happen. But right now I've got a very small goal it's out of my control, but I want to see a stranger wearing an It's Cool to Cry t-shirt. I get pictures from mates in Sydney, around Melbourne and Brizzy even, saying, hey, I've just seen someone wearing your top. I'm like, oh, yeah, I just want to see one person. That would be nice. Out of my control, but it'll be a treat when it happens. And then I'm sure Sean from Shaka that was on here, I'm sure that Cooper from Good Human Factory would say the same thing, is that they want to see suicide rates, they want to see mental illness rates go down. And whether It's Cool to Cry is part of that or not, I'll never know. But it would be great to think that because of that and because of the people that buy It's Cool to Cry, or are at least having better conversations about their mental health, everyone has had an input into that, because the way it's going is not great. So let's all start to chip in and reduce these rates and have better relationships because we're having better chats. We've got better mental health because we're having better chats. So that's where it's going. If I could make a living out of it, like I was telling you on the way here, it's not a full-time job. It's definitely not making money. I Airbnb my second room. I labour as a landscaper a couple of days a week, which is great. It helps fund the brand and it helps pay the bills. But if I could make It's Cool to Cry a full-time thing, then that would be beautiful. That'd be great to get there. There's a lot to go, but one day it'll happen.
It will.
One day it'll happen.
Yeah. So you're very determined, you're passionate, and you've got your skin in the game as well. So
yeah, exactly.
it's all going to happen, brother, because especially the name as well, I love it because it's so stand out as well. It's cool to cry. It triggers questions or curiosity in your own mind. Oh, what does that mean? Or, oh, look at that. It's cool to cry because it's very bold and out there, which I think is good, especially if you want to bring awareness to mental health.
Yep, it is bold. It wasn't my first choice, or it definitely wasn't the first one I landed on. I've had a few stinkers before that, but this was the one that stuck. And it is thought-provoking. I think you asked before about how and why you got to the name, and it took a lot of brainstorming to get to that. But it was the crying thing that's really, I reckon crying, it's the height of vulnerability. And if you can cry in front of someone, that's pretty vulnerable. And I'm not saying you have to fucking cry to feel better, but anything from there to having a mental health conversation is going to make you feel better. It's this showing of vulnerability that makes us less perfect and it makes us more human. And that is going to bring on connection. If you told me that your job's going great, you just got a pay rise, you're paying your rent and your mortgage on time, your dogs can do fucking backflips because you've been training them, your body's going great, all this, that. I don't know where I'm going to be able to fit into that conversation because of you're so perfect.
Yeah.
It's this way of outlining our own imperfections, that we will have very different imperfections, but it's a great way to start to know that there's not this standard that can't be upheld. And there's those sort of conversations that mean the most.
And also the ripple effect from it too, because someone buys a shirt, let's say they wear that long sleeve, they really like the design on it. Let's say someone buys that long sleeve, they wear it to the next family gathering, next minute, uncle, cousins, aunties, you all see the shirt and it triggers curiosity in them. You never know what spark or change that can create in their life, or conversation that can change, the conversation that can be created to make a change within the family.
Yep.
Just by one person wearing the shirt and the conversations that can start.
Yep. And if you look at Livin', they're another mob that are doing some great work from an apparel point of view and workshop point of views. Is that on their website, they've got each product starts 20 conversations, life-changing conversations. I'm like, fuck oath, that's good. And It's Cool to Cry isn't a new idea. It's just my iteration of it, my execution of it. But that's a great example what the Livin' team are doing. They're putting garments on people to have open conversations about their mental health.
And also, was there a specific reason why you chose green, yellow, purple for your colours?
No, I got very lucky that I got introduced to a graphic designer, Britt Manning. Shout out Britt.
Britt.
And she was a jet. I was blown away by the first round of drawings that she gave me, and they were in black and white. And I said, let's just follow this bouncing ball around here. And then she came back with those colours, and I'm like, I don't need to see anything else. That's it. So that's the logo. They're pretty loud, but I suppose this ties back to where I was at the start of the conversation, is that mental health, it is something we can take seriously, but there is a fun, lighthearted aspect that we can have with it to try and make these conversations more approachable. I'm not trying to discount from anyone's journey, and I'm not taking away that they've been sad or angry and upset and gone through the mud, but by way of saying everything will be okay and kumbaya and it's all toxic positivity and all that. It's like, nah, fuck, all right, you've been through the ringer, but this is a good way to show it, and we can positively launch from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also like in a way, like a walk and billboard for mental self-awareness as well.
Mate, bang on. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Yeah, this is awesome, man. And also, like, for the listeners here, What's some ways that they can get involved with It's Cool to Cry, like with your social media, with the products? Like, what's some of the ways they can get involved?
Yeah, look, head to itscooltocry.com. If you're in a position to buy something, I'd love that. If not, or if you are in a position to buy something but you don't like my logo or my clothes, go and buy from Cooper Chapman, go and buy from Sean at Shaka, go and buy from the team at Livin', go and buy from someone that's trying to make a difference. Go and buy from Homie, go and buy from Clothing the Gaps. Go and do something and put something where your values, give your wardrobe purpose. Go and do that before you go and buy another brand and try and make a little bit of a difference in whatever it could be. If you can't afford to buy anything, that's okay. Give the website a look. Go to a section called the Mental Health Hub. Go to a section there called How You Wheelie Feeling, and go and download a tool called the Feels Wheel. And this gets sent out free with every order, but this is a tool that anyone can use to properly identify and articulate how they're really feeling. And I encourage you to, if you're already having conversations about your mental health, go and have better ones with this tool. If you're not having conversations about your mental health, I really encourage you to go and have the first one. The first one's the hardest. Just eat the frog. Go and get it out of the way. And remember that this isn't about being perfect.
Yeah.
This is about practice. You're going to fuck it up. Just go and do it.
Yeah.
And be kind to yourself. Keep showing up and keep being kind to yourself.
I love that as well, because I feel like especially the mental health space, that's such an important part, is having community over competition. Like you said, like if you don't like the design of mine, go and support Cooper or Shaka. Like the community over competition aspect of life is so important, because we get more benefits in life if we all come together rather than dividing and trying to do our own thing.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
Before we finish up here, brother, I want to give you the stage to share any message you want to share, or maybe there's something you want to speak about that we haven't spoke about, but the floor is yours, brother.
Dangerous.
You're going to get cancelled, don't you?
What I'd like to say is, if you're on the other end of a mental health conversation, this is also for you about practice and not being perfect. So just go into those conversations without having the need to fix anything or give advice. Just be there for that person. Make sure that they're heard and understood. And the best way I feel like we can do this is actively listen. So listen, ask questions about their experience, repeat them back to them so that you know what you're talking about, and then ask them if you've understood correctly. And that'll give these people so much confidence that they've been heard and understood. It'll build trust. It'll build connection. And that's all you have to do. I come from a long line of fixers. My mum's a fixer, my dad's a fixer, I'm a recovering fixer. Just don't worry about having to fix anything. Just be there for the person, and that is the ultimate compliment. Like, they've shown you so much vulnerability, poured potentially a lot of feelings out. That's a fucking heap of heavy lifting that you've just done for them. Be there for them, and that's it. That's it. Don't worry about having to try and give advice or trying to fix anything.
Amen.
Amen.
Well, thank you for coming on the show, brother.
Mate, Ryan, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, mate, and good luck with everything. Hope you keep smashing it.
Yeah, absolutely likewise. Cheers, brother.